Welcome to Willing Warrior. This is episode number 51. We've titled this episode, Amusing Ourselves to Death. I wish I could tell you that that was my idea, but I borrowed the title from a book by Neil Postman. It's a great book if you can find it. So Amusing Ourselves to Death, and if I can call this / the movie episode. And so what are we doing? We live in an age that's so drastically different than, say, our grandparents' age, right?
Yes.
So even our own lifetime, we grew up with TV, and then we had cable TV, and then we had on-demand TV, then we had the internet, we had blogs, we have TikTok, 30-second videos, we have everything at our disposal. Click, 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 and the most popular thing, not on our video feeds, but the most popular thing that captures people's attention is pornography, corruption. So what do we do? Right? What do we do? What do we do taking back to amuse ourselves to death, right? We live in a world, microwaves, we don't have to work like our parents did, and we have a lot of free time. So many of us have amused ourselves all the way to death. And what does Scripture call us to do? Scripture says, number your days. And here you are with a mature couple, and we have, I'm not trying to be morbid, we have less days ahead of us than the days we have behind us. Right? And so number your days. It says, number your days, live your life backwards. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that, and by the way, this would be the theme out of Ecclesiastes, is to think about, how do you want your life to end? What do you want it to look like? Well, start making that happen today. Right? Start making that happen and live a life that's worthy of looking back, of encouraging and telling somebody about. So mentioned earlier, prior generations didn't have this same degree of freedom. Why? What filled their days?
They were busy working. They didn't have, before the big box stores that had everything, definitely before Amazon, where you can just click an order and it comes to your door. But my grandparents, I think both of them, grew up on farms. And my mom grew up on a farm as a little girl. And they worked from the time they got out of bed pretty much until because it was even before, especially with my grandparents, before a lot of machinery. So, or you go down to Cades Cove in the Smoky Mountains, and you go up to the plateau where there was a small, it wasn't a village even, it was just, a few log cabins. And you read the little historical signs there, and it's like, so-and-so family lived here, and they had 8 children, and they were homesteading in the area and stuff. And you go into the log cabin, and it's basically one room with a fireplace on one end. And the bigger houses had a loft above. They're like, how in the world did they have 8 children? I don't know. But, the children, when they got to be working age, they would have to go feed the chickens. They had to split wood. They had to go hunting. They had to do farming.
So do you think any of these children who grew up in your grandparents or this kind of situation, did they struggle with self-esteem? Did they know, did they wonder, what's the purpose of my life?
I don't think it wasn't easy, but as far as self-esteem, I don't think they struggled. I don't think they had time to struggle because they found fulfillment in work
Right.
that God created them to do.
Right. Yeah, little Joey, he gets the water, and this one gets the milk, and this one feeds the chickens. Everyone had to participate in it. And if they didn't do their work, then it was pretty obvious, wasn't it?
Yeah, I remember my mom stories of when she and her sister, they had to be in the kitchen by, like 5:30 or 6 in the morning, and they were making pancakes for all the, the rest of the family. I mean, they were young. It was like, heck, they helped their mama.
So those people who grew up and we didn't know the people from the 1800s, but we did know your parents and your grandparents. How did they, when the Lord took them home, and He has taken them home, right? Their life was filled with what? What were they doing with their time most of the time, right?
During
they were
what portion?
Working, right?
Yeah.
In fact, your dad continued. He even after he retired, so-called, from his business,
He'd be up at 5 in the morning and
Yeah.
going and doing stuff. And when they retired from their business per se, they didn't just stay at home and do nothing, but they explored. Well, they explored some of God's creation. They got to travel some. They developed old hobbies that they didn't have time before, or new hobbies. My mom did card making and all kinds of different things. So
what we're talking
they
about,
stayed busy.
yeah, excuse me, what we're talking about here is this concept of we think it's good to watch a movie, right? But we think our culture has gone from grandparents, parents' culture where, hey, I get up in the morning, I work, I sit down, and I might take a little bit of entertainment. I might read a book, I might do this, do that, to now, as quick as we can turn on the TV or turn on the internet, that's what we're doing, right? And instead of something productive and working. So God has created us to work 6 days. Now, it doesn't mean we're to work 6 24-hour days, right? I think he would tell us something like, hey, work while it's day. So let's just roughly say somewhere around 12-ish hours. And I don't mean only at a job, because you come home, there's dishes to be cleaned, laundry, what have you, right? By the way, any mothers listening to say, I wish I could had to work 12 hours.
Ours is pretty 24/7.
Right. So,
that's good.
So, but God has created us to do this. There's value in it. It's hard, but it's blessing and benefiting others, right? And amusement should be an afterthought, not the primary thought. When we make amusement the primary objective of our life, we become extremely self-centered and worthless. We're not blessing anybody else. We're just consumers. Give, right? And as a child, so my parents didn't grow up. The TVs were just coming on. So as a child, TVs were something new. And I grew up.
Very expensive.
Yeah, I grew up with a TV in every room. I, as a young child in the late 60s, early 70s, became an expert in sitcoms from the 70s. I could almost repeat lines from the Beverly Hillbillies, the Brady Bunch, and the Andy Griffith Show, right? And so looking back, what's the benefit? Well, if there's a Trivial Pursuit game and there's something about culture from that time, I'm the man you want on the team. But besides that, what's the benefit? So as a young married couple, confess Christ, how did we do it different? How did we manage the TV?
Well, we didn't have one for quite a while. I know for at least the first year of our marriage, we didn't have a TV. And
cable?
No.
Never.
No. Well, just brief period when great grandma would come, and she enjoyed a few shows. So, and she came to help and bless us when we had our first and second child, So, but yeah, even then we were usually gifted a TV, but usually tried to use it sparingly.
So how did our children, growing up in a house with essentially no cable TV, and maybe there was a TV from time to time, didn't hook it up to an antenna, right? I think it was a VHS, but it was on rarely. How did they make it? How could you live that way? Did they suffer?
Well, they probably think they did, but I would say they came out ahead. Just encourage them to build with Legos, do puzzles. We would read books a lot. There's a whole host of things that they could do. It wasn't work, but play for children is work because they're using their minds. They're using, they don't really have critical thinking skills, but they're trying to solve a puzzle and how to make things connect
So people would say, what's the difference between, so we read in books a lot, right? Say, what's the difference between reading a book and just turning on a TV show that's just a book come to life? What's the big deal? What is one better than the other?
I think so.
Yeah. Why?
Generally, I remember like Lord of the Rings when that came out. Dad was like, "You can't go see the movie unless you've read the book." So, man, we had some people page turning. but generally, I think reading, we have to use a lot more of our senses instead of just seeing that scene set out for us. We get the description in the book, and then we have to use our imaginations to concoct that, a picture of it. And it requires so much more of our skills, cognitive skills and everything else, learning new vocabulary. And one can learn new vocabulary from a movie, but if you read it, there's just always a little bit more that it's going to be grounded in your brain.
So some will say, but I'm not a reader.
Yeah.
So here we have 10 kids, right? And there are some of our kids that read different rates or volumes than other kids. But what do you say to someone, I'm not a reader? I don't like to read.
Well, just like anything else that you don't like to do, you can. I know you didn't read for the first, all the way through high school, right? For the most part.
Right.
Any more than you had to. If there were Cliff Notes, that's what you went for. But, some do enjoy it more than others, but like so many other things, it can be sort of an acquired taste. And I would encourage one to read just because it develops, it keeps your mind sharp and
Let's try this one. How do we know God wants us to be readers?
Because he wrote the word. He is the word.
He didn't give us a video. By the way, I'm not against a video. He didn't give us a video. He gave us his word. He could have waited and had it all recorded on audio. But he didn't. Mm-hmm. He gave us his word. So we need to grow up to be readers.
The word. Yeah.
Right. So there is a time, by the way, God conveys to us stories. So do we ever watch movies?
Oh, of course.
So we do watch movies, right? So
I enjoy movies.
There is a place for entertainment. There's a place to sit down and let's watch a movie. But let's be purposeful about it. So maybe I said this is going to be our movie episode. What are some of our either favorite family movies or your favorite movies, right?
Wow.
Or that we could recommend?
Well, I remember I can name the few movies that I got to see as a child, especially like in a theater or a drive-in or something. And this goes way back in our children. Some of them haven't ever seen, like Benji, Apple Dumpling Gang.
That's going way back.
Sound of Music. Probably more people are familiar. That's pretty much a classic. The Sound of Music. I saw that in the theater. But I don't know. Growing up, our children enjoyed Anne of Green Gables. And we did read some of those books. This isn't a movie, but Little House on the Prairie, some of those. And we would read through the books too, but enjoyed watching some of that. I don't know, you think of a few.
Well, I've got a few other ones. So just for fun, right? Napoleon Dynamite, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Hunt for Wilder People. You just want to have a good laugh, watch it. Now, there are some other serious movies that are trying to make a statement. One that wouldn't be on the Hollywood hit list would be Babette's Feast.
Babette's Feast.
Yeah, Babette's Feast. Look that one up. Recently, we've been, my wife and I have been watching through some BBC shows. One of the ones we picked up was All Things Great and Small.
All Creatures.
All Creatures Great and Small from the James Herriot novel. So this was good. So there's times you say, we're just going to watch a movie. We're going to do it together as a family. And you watch it for fun. You laugh, you joke, you enjoy it. And then there are other movies that are trying to make a serious statement. You don't always know they're trying to make a serious statement, but stories change culture. Here's proof. Uncle Tom's Cabin was a story that changed culture. Some of you are old enough watching this one. You might remember the impact that the movie Roots made upon the culture from I think this is the 70s. And now more recently, something more that's trying to do something very serious is the movie Sound of Freedom. So these are trying to make a statement. Now, and sometimes the statements are great, sometimes they're not so good. But every author who writes, every movie director who puts on a movie have a worldview, have a way of which they approach the world. And that worldview will come out. And it come out subtle, it'll come out not so subtle. And you have to understand their worldview because you're drinking from it. You're drinking their Kool-Aid. And so some of their worldviews will be eat, drink, and be promiscuous. For tomorrow we die, right? And don't worry about anything God says. Just do what you feel. Let your heart go. And by the way, touched on Disney. Disney's gone way over the top, right? They used to be so nice and so good, but now They're encouraging all kinds of things that are against God and against his word, right? So if there's a serious movie that you're watching or you're watching with your family, we would encourage you to watch it, turn it off, discuss it, and try to understand what the worldview was to see if you were drawn in. If you ever find yourself rooting for the villain,
Oh yeah, that's a big one now.
or if you find yourself rooting for people who are living in sin and going against their parents, right? Well, then you're rooting against God in his ways. So you've got to be mindful of this, right? Now, there are other stories. We saw one the other day, Sweetland.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to see another good movie, if you want to see it, you want to see how your life, your actions today will have impact long after you're gone. Watch the movie Sweetland, right? And watch how God uses hard things to bless others and to grow us up. So God shapes our view of the world with his story. The Bible is almost all stories. By the way, if you want to know what a good story is, God's stories are good stories. You're like, oh, David and Bathsheba's a good story.
Mm.
It's not a rosy story, but it's a good story. It's suspenseful. People are growing. Things are happening, right? You read the book of Judges, like, oh my goodness, there's some horrific events that happen there. But these are good stories because they're God's stories. And so we've got to, by the way, how would those be rated? How would the Bible be rated if it were just put in camera? What would Hollywood rate it?
R for
R.
sure. Yeah.
So discuss that. Do we say, oh, I just use Hollywood's ratings and whatever they rate it, I call that good.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't trust the Hollywood ratings. I think people in general can see the direction that they have gone, and what used to be, even X-rated is now considered R or PG-13,
Right.
and they just keep pushing it as far as they can go. And they will have audiences
Right.
because that's appealing to,
So there could be R movies that you wouldn't show to your 5-year-old, but they could be a really good movie. For instance, a Bible story could be rated R, right? But it's got a really good gist. Then there's other ones that are R because it's just gratuitous violence and sex.
Right, or language. But yeah, like you said, some of the R-rated movies, because of violence, like if it's a war movie, but even if it's historical and
like The Patriot.
Yeah. But there are some pretty gruesome scenes.
Right.
Yeah.
So you'd watch it with age appropriate, right?
Right, yeah.
How about, G movies? They're always all good, right? Because they don't use any 4-letter words.
Yeah. Well, I think you were talking the Disney. So, I grew up thinking, oh, well, if it's in cartoon form, it's for children. And that cannot be said anymore, both, I think, TV-wise and movie-wise. And in the movies, the Disney and others, they may not use, like you said, the 4-letter word or promiscuity or anything, but the worldview that is coming and being pushed can be really alarming.
Two men loving each other. That's good.
It's love.
Are you against love? No, I'm not against love, but that's lust, right?
Yeah.
Flame lust. See if you remember this. What's the chief end of man?
To glorify God and enjoy him forever.
Man's chief end, by the way, borrowing it from the Heidelberg Catechism, man's chief end is to glorify God and enjoy him. And what's he given to help us enjoy?
All kinds of blessings.
Yeah, so look around and see what God has given to us. So when we talk about amusement, I think of this too much honey, right? A little honey's good,
right.
but too much honey. So God's given us food. We can go too far and we become
Gluttons.
right.
Yeah.
He's given us a nice glass of wine with alcohol content that our heart might be glad, but too much of it,
We become drunk.
drunkard, right?
Right.
He's given us rest. Oh, sweet rest after a hard day, right? But then too much rest, become the sluggard that. So
Become lazy. Yeah.
right. So the same thing with entertainment, right? God's given us stories, and too much stories, we become zombies. And now people don't think, their whole view of history is, well, I watched that movie. That's what I know about the world. I watched a movie. No, it's somebody's view of the world, right? Don't be a zombie. So God is a creator. We should be creators. So enjoy movies. Go watch them, but go and live life. So we talked about we didn't have a TV in the house. So what are some, God's a creator, what were some ways that kids, we could be creators of our own, or maybe rearrangers would be a better word?
Well, you mean what do we do to fill our time?
Right,
or
right.
Well, as God is a creator, and we can't create really anything new. We take what God has already created, we might make something different of it or model, So, as homeschool, a lot of times what we would do is we would have craft time, and I'm talking just scissors and paste and, paints and stuff, nothing fancy. But, but as they got older, developing some of those things into, well, especially a lot of my married daughters, they knit and crochet and make bread. And our young men, I remember a couple of our children, they would just take nails and they would pound them with a hammer and fashion little, like almost like miniature swords, and fashion them. They would, just make all kinds of interesting creations out of metal and wire. So, I mean, there is an abundance of, and when you're using gifts and talents in being creative with that in the kitchen or in the garage or wherever. So there should never be a shortage of things to do.
Right. So try this experiment. So if you're out and about in the evening, it's dark, you drive by a house, and what do you see emanating from
the blue, what do we call it? The blue
screen of death.
Screen.
Right?
Yeah.
So again, watch TV. There's nothing wrong with it. But be purposeful as opposed to just surfing mindlessly. What's on? Oh, right.
Well, what about this though? We can surf that.
Yeah.
That is a brain drain.
Yeah, the desk.
And I'm guilty of it at times.
The desk scrolls, right? So remember what we said. Live your life backwards. You're going to take thousands of decisions, and your life will come to an end. How do you want your life to end, right? Do you want to be the master of Netflix? Or do you want to be a master of Netflix, a spectator of life? Or do you want to be involved? Do you want to be in the game? We would encourage you to live life. Don't stand on the sidelines. So I have a friend of mine, retired from work. He's 60 plus years old. He's taken up piano lessons.
Yeah.
Right? He is doing something. Now, will he ever be a grand piano master? Probably not, right?
So one day, I don't know if he knows this, I've always wanted to learn violin.
Oh.
So that might be a good time to wear your
Yeah. So be creative, right? Everyone's got different gifts, right? Read a book, take up woodworking, brew some beer, make some wine, live life, take up golf, right? Go out with the grandkids. I don't know if we can still do this or not. Have a game of kickball.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah.
It require running.
Right. So, and to start this, let me offer you this, right? Scripture talks about a time of fasting. Put aside some things. Put aside pleasure. We fast from food for a time. Husband and wife from physical relations, it says, would fast for a time. Fast from the TV. Fast from the smartphone. First week, you'd be like a drug addict, right? I need my fix, right? Get a week or two into it and be purposeful. Fill your time with something else. And before you know it, like, wow, there's so much you can get done in a day. And not that everything we do has to be with a business purpose, right?
Right.
But be a blessing and to some, be a blessing and enjoy God's creation, right? So what would be some ways you would encourage people to enjoy God's creation?
Well, we've covered a lot of them, but if you have a particular interest in something, birds, we have some bird feeders out there. And if we don't recognize a bird, it's always fun to take a picture and sort of look it up and learn. We have a friend who can do, I don't know, probably like 50 bird calls. and he can recognize them, which I think is amazing. Something that I haven't done for a long time, but I would like to try to do is gardening, learn some new skills, learn some new baking skills. And I personally think this is a wonderful time if you've put entertainment aside for a while or whatever, to invest time serving. It opens up a door and an opportunity to help others too.
Right. So what we want to encourage you to do is when your Lord comes to take you home, may he find you busy, not watching the TV, not a sin, but busy blessing others. And if you're busy blessing others, your life will have purpose. And so enjoy life. God has made it, and be a blessing to others. Thank you for joining us for this video. If you like what you've seen, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and love to see you back again. Until then, may God bless.